And I remember in London at the same time, Prabhupada's room was on the second floor, I believe, of the temple in Bury Place, second or third floor. And just off of his rooms was the secretary's office. It was almost like a closet, a long closet. Shamashundar was his secretary at that time. And one day I was doing some typing. Sometimes Prabhupada would let me do some minor secretarial stuff. And I was typing and this head popped in the door and said, "Hello, is Shamashundar there?" in an English accent. And I looked over and I said, "No, he's not here now." And I looked back, I went typing and then I did a double take because it was George Harrison. And I recognized him. And I said, "He's not here, but Prabhupada's here and I'm sure he'd like to see you." And he said, "Oh, I don't want to bother him." I said, "I don't think it'd be a bother." And so I went in the room and I said, "Prabhupada, George Harrison is here." And he said, "Oh, send him in." So I went out and he was waiting outside and I said, "He wants to see you." And he started taking his shoes or socks off, something, and he said, "I get so nervous when I go to see Prabhupada." He said, "Actually, I just got my hair cut to see him." He had had long hair and a beard and he had cut it short. And so he went in and closed the door. And I stayed outside for a couple of seconds and was just too curious. So I opened the door and George was dandabat, flat on the floor, saying the prayers in Sanskrit. And so I went in and paid my obeisances and he sat back by the door. And Prabhupada's desk was on the other side of the room and he said, "No, come closer, come closer." So George kind of inched his way forward, very humble, very humble. And Prabhupada said, "No, no, not there, here." And he patted behind his desk. So George came around behind the desk and Prabhupada, as soon as he was within reach, he reached out and grabbed him and pulled him in and hugged him, put his head on his chest and was messing his hair up. He said, "It is so good to see you, so good to see you. How is your wife, Patty?" George said, "Very good, Prabhupada." So they spoke and George actually asked him, he said, "Prabhupada, I've been thinking whether or not I should join the temple or shave my head and actually take up full practice." Prabhupada said, "No, no, no." He said, "You have a great gift. You have a place in the world where you can spread Krishna consciousness in a big way." He said, "Rather you stay where you are and adapt Krishna consciousness into your music." He said, "I will teach you some of the songs." So George, and next day he came and brought Ravi Shankar. And for a week they would come. George came every day, Ravi Shankar came 2 or 3 times. And Prabhupada would get out Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songbook and go through it with George and find songs and give him essences, give him some of the essences to use in his music. And it was such a loving exchange. It was really a beautiful thing to see.
One time I was in a car with Srila Prabhupada going to an engagement, and Giriraj was driving. He had just become a devotee. And we were going to a college engagement, and they didn't know where it was, but I happened to know, because I was living there for some time. So I said, "We'll just go down this street and turn the corner," and I knew how to get there. So Prabhupada said, "Oh, sorry dear, she knows everything." So Prabhupada was very encouraging, to the women. I always picked up that he treated us equally.
There were 2 times where Prabhupada and Yogi Bhajan met together. And Prabhupada was very strong about the purity of Krishna conscious philosophy and very much aware of the loopholes in many of the philosophies that were preached by Indian gurus. But with Yogi Bhajan, there was a real brotherhood. When Yogiji would come to see Prabhupada, they would laugh, they would tell jokes, they talked about the upcoming world situation. Yogi Bhajan was very heavy about it. He said, "Prabhupada, the streets, my vision is the streets of the major cities of America will be rivers of blood." And Prabhupada said, "Yes, there is a lot coming." And then Prabhupada said to him on one occasion, you Sikhs have always protected us Vaishnavas. He said, we are the Brahmins, you are the Kshatriyas. You are the ones that came to Vrindavan and saved the temples and saved the devotees. And similarly, when this world situation increases, our movements will join together. And it was a very nice seeing of acceptance by seeing the spirit of a person, acceptance of someone of another, apparently another faith.
We got to visit one time when his godbrothers came, and he was speaking in Bengali, and he asked us to bring down this book. In this book he had the reviews that we had gotten from the library party, and he was so proud reading the different reviews. He had me read some of the different reviews that to his godbrothers. He was so proud of that, and I read one from Ganesham Bhaktitirtha and one of mine, and from Oxford, and one from one of the schools we went to, and Prabhupada would say in English a bit, say that, how scholars and these books are being, accepted all the world, and his godbrothers were very much impressed, and I could see that beam of smile that was in Prabhupada, and that sort of instilled so much faith in me, how much important that Prabhupada really wanted this done, and that was for a whole year, it kept us going.
Well, when I was in college, maybe 70, I studied Bhagavad Gita in an Oriental philosophy class. I was in engineering school. And there was only one verse in the entire Gita that stuck in my mind. It was Api Sadhu Sudacharo, even if one commits abominable activities, one's devotee, they're to be considered saintly because they're rightly situated, to paraphrase a verse. So that verse struck in my mind. And the reason it struck in my mind, I don't really even know. It's not one of the more significant verses of the Gita, but somehow it seemed to me that, well, you're either a saint or a sinner. I was kind of a black and white type person then. I couldn't understand that verse. So then I asked my professor to explain it to me, gave me his I don't know answer, which is, well, it's intuitively obvious. That was his way of saying he didn't know. So I said, okay. Now, I never read Sanskrit in my life, never saw Sanskrit in my life, and and I had read, that was Radha Krishna and Edgerton's Gita, I had read just in English. So then when I met Prabhupada, I actually want to find this quote. So Prabhupada says that somehow or other, if someone prays to Krishna, you cannot say he's evil. Prabhupada and I are having a discussion on a point that I had asked Prabhupada, if somebody lives an evil life but prays to become rich, he may still become rich? Prabhupada said, yes, praying to Krishna is not evil. Bob, oh yes, Srila Prabhupada, chuckling. Somehow or other, he prays to Krishna, you cannot say that he's evil. Yes, I say. And Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Pi Chet Sudarcharo Bhajate Mam Anya Bhak. Have you read it? Yes, the Sanskrit I don't know, but the English I do. And that was the only verse in Bhagavad Gita that I knew in English, the whole Gita. And that was the very first verse Prabhupada quoted to me in Sanskrit, and then he asked me if I know what it means. And it didn't dawn on me till later that day that Prabhupada did a transcendental trick on me. Krishna did a transcendental trick. And Prabhupada actually knew that was the only verse I knew in Gita, it's the first one he quoted to me.